Okay, let's call ourselves to order. Special meeting of the West Newbury Board of Selectmen, Thursday, April 9th at 6:03 p.m. We haven't run one this big with remote participation. I hope everyone can hear well. In the beginning, I'd like to have everybody be muted so that we don't have chaos in the beginning. We haven't the one this big. We understand that this meeting is a challenge for public participation. The best option we have in the present COVID-19 situation. So we need to get comments to mass housing over this project proposal by June 14th. So we want to have a lot of public input. The way the meeting is going to work tonight, Angus is going to give us a 5 or 10 minute presentation on the process of a 40B. Angus has a lot of experience with this. I think he'll give us a good synopsis of what's going on. Then I'd like to have mentions by the different town employee, town boards, department chairman on how they will, they're going to be, what facets of this project they will be looking at. This is only the beginning process. We're going to have other public comment. Finally, after the department heads are finished speaking, we want to take a public comment. Try to hold your comments to a minute apiece. We have a lot of people here that want to speak, and I would also ask that everyone, for the sake of the minutes, and so that we get everyone's name and what their comment is, that they would give their name and their address first, and then try to keep their comment to a minute. So without further ado, I will let Town Manager, Mr. Jennings, take over.
Okay, so I also, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
So I also want to let people know that there is a chat function in this GoToMeeting platform. So even while you're on mute, you can send a chat text message that can go either to me as the organizer or to everybody. So if you want to start a dialogue on the side while we're talking, you're certainly welcome to do that. The main points I want to cover is the process and where we are in the process. So this is the project eligibility site approval process. This is project eligibility letter that the developer is seeking from Mass Housing, which is a quasi-public, it's not a state agency per se, but it kind of is. So typically, so the developer cannot apply for a comprehensive permit locally with the Zoning Board of Appeals until they have received a project eligibility letter from Mass Housing. So that's where we are in the process. They submitted that project eligibility letter application with Mass Housing late last week. I think it was last Friday. And in the normal course of things, the town would only be given 30 days to provide any comments that we have on the site eligibility and the project. Fortunately, we got an extension of that. We still don't have a whole ton of time, but we have 75 days. That brings us to June 14th. So those comments will be sent to Mass Housing through the Board of Selectmen. So we've sent out a broad call to the heads, boards, committees, and commissions, project abutters, as well as the general public through the town website and Facebook for any and all questions and comments people have. We're asking that those all be sent to the selectmen or to my office. They're all getting to the same place, and we will then be putting them together under a single cover with a comment letter that the board will approve for submittal to Mass Housing. When that goes to Mass Housing on or around June 14th, we will include with that as attachments the letters that we receive from other parties, but we'll also have a single letter that we'll try to hit the high points of the town's questions or comments or concerns on the proposal. So it's really important to emphasize that this is the stage we are right now is not a regulatory process. This is not a permit the town's being asked to give. This is eligibility letter. Housing is being asked to give. The town's being asked to give comments. So it would be subsequent to this if the developer gets project eligibility. At that point, they would be eligible to apply for a comprehensive permit with appeals. Under a comprehensive permit, developer is allowed to request waivers of local regulations. They are able to get waivers from state standards and regulations. So whether that's the Conservation Commission or the Board of Health, Title V, those things all need to be met. And any request for local waiver needs to be accompanied by a demonstration by the applicant that compliance with that local regulation would make the project uneconomic. So at that point, if this does end up, getting mass housing eligibility letter and applying for comprehensive permit before the Board of Appeals, that's when we get into a public hearing. That's a regulatory process. And at that point, the town would be conducting or would be overseeing third-party peer reviews, whether that's regarding engineering, traffic, environmental impact, impact analysis. Those kinds of things would happen at that stage, not at this project or site eligibility. So mass housing, what they're looking for in their review of the project eligibility determination, set out in mass regulation, it's 760 CMR 56.04, and they really urge towns to frame any comments or questions that we have in terms of responsiveness to the specific criteria that they're looking at. So I'm just going to summarize these very briefly, and then Archie, I think that's going to pretty well wrap up my portion of this. Housing's looking that the proposed project appears generally eligible under the requirements of the housing subsidy program. Second, that the site of the proposed project is generally appropriate for residential development, taking into consideration information provided by the municipality or other parties, what other actions the town has taken to meet affordable housing needs. Mass Housing is looking that the conceptual project design is generally appropriate for the site on which it is located, taking into consideration factors that including proposed use, site plan and building massing, topography, environmental resources, and integration into existing development patterns. Whether the proposed project appears financially feasible within the housing market in which it will be situated, whether an initial development pro forma has been reviewed, including a land valuation determination consistent with state guidelines, and that the project appears financially feasible. The applicant has to demonstrate that they are either a public agency, a nonprofit organization, or in this case, a limited dividend organization that meets the eligibility standards of the housing program. That the applicant has site control. So certainly, within the project eligibility, this is our opportunity to make sure that the concerns that we have locally are reflected in the mass housing review. So Archie, we do have a number of department heads and board and commission representatives that I can see are present. Can you see who's on the call as well?
I can see some of them, but you have the list of people that work. Angus, do you have a list of people from the town that that did want to talk? I don't have that.
I do. Yeah, and not all of them, their names showing up. So why don't we start with those whose names are showing up?
Okay.
And we also have others on the call, including, so I'll tell you who's present. Bert, the conservation agent, is present. Mike Dwyer, the fire chief, is present.
I can see his present.
We've got John Dodge and Open Space Committee. We've got Wendy Reed from the Planning Board and the Open Space Committee and the board. We've got at least one member of the Board of Appeals on, Christelle, I'm sorry, Judy Gregg. So we also, I know Leah and Chief Durand and Sam Jocelyn, our building inspector, I believe are all on the call, but I'm not seeing their names, so they're showing up as numbers. So we've got Dwyer and Bert. Do you want to start with them?
Sure. And I'd also like to say that Glenn Kemper isn't on this call because he's at another important meeting relating to the school building projects. He's on the school building committee, so that's why he's not here. So, Mike, do you want to talk about fire protection first? Start off with that.
I'm trying to get Mike unmuted. It's taken me a second with this interface. So,
okay,
Mike, I'll tell you when you're set to go. Okay.
It looks like he can unmute himself.
Oh, yeah.
Did.
You might be muted yourself. Yeah, there you go.
Ready for me?
Yep.
Okay, great. Yeah, so obviously, my number one concern with this project is going to be fire protection. First and foremost, the water department and I would be looking at hydrant locations for this site. And then secondary to that is going to be access in with fire apparatus. I think, Angus, you mentioned that initially about the swept path analysis that would be down the road, but those would be my concerns. And then in addition to that, I would have some questions about the setbacks on all individual units.
Okay. Mike, are you there?
Did I lose you?
It faded out right toward the end.
The last point that I brought up is obviously going to be setbacks as they regard to the individual properties for fire department access, whether it be fire trucks or personnel.
what about Mike? What about turning radiuses of cul-de-sacs and things like that? Is that involved?
Yeah, so that would be the swept path analysis, and that would be done with a computer using the data that we have regarding our fleet. So the length and widths of our vehicles. That would take into consideration the cul-de-sacs, the turning, whether it be from Main Street or Coffin Street.
Okay, I think so. This is what we would like to people to see. We're going to evaluate the project in all these kinds of factors. So I don't think we need to get into. We don't have time actually to get into the real details of it tonight. But that's what I'd like people to come away with. These are the kinds of things we're going to be looking at. So I think that's good, Mike. Let's go on to somebody else, Angus. Thank
Okay,
you.
Bert, you are unmuted.
Okay.
Bert Comus is our conservation agent.
So with conservation, yeah, we'd be concerned with wetlands on the property and how the project will comply with the Wetlands Protection Act. And as of now, we've received an abbreviated notice of resource area delineation. which basically is just asking, is the boundary line, so the wetland boundary line in the field and shown on the plan accurate? That's where we're at right now.
So Bert, one thing I think is important for people to understand is that ANRAD process is, just as you described it, that is not the formal review of a proposed development. That's not before.
No, it's not. It's just looking at the wetland lines and making sure that they're accurate. The wetlands that were already delineated.
How, do you know how long ago those were delineated?
I believe they were delineated, I think it started the fall of 2019 and then extended into the winter. I don't have the exact dates.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Bert. And Angus, who can you see next?
We've got Mike Goutet, our water and superintendent. Mike, I'm just trying to unmute you, so bear with me a second. Okay, Mike, you are unmuted on my end. You might be still muted on your end. So, Mike, if you're there, if you can look for a microphone icon, it might have a red, be marked in red.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we got you. Yep.
All right, I'm new to this, bear with me. Basically what the water department needs to do right off is look at what we need to, basically our permit and the Water Management Act over in Newburyport. We really have to look at our allocation of water that we're gonna be able to give to this development, especially where it was looking at 40,000+ gallons per day. So basically the first thing that we really would have to do is hire our engineering firm to come up with the process of what we do need to look for, and then figure out what we have to pass on to the owner of the project to move forward. The owner of the project's already got a hold of me, and he wanted to do some fire flow calculations, which we do with the model that we have with our engineer. But it's premature right now until we really know the process of what they're going to be doing as far as how soon they're going to be building, what stages, how many years this is going to take, and that would matter on the fire flows. But really the fire flows are a minor thing right now. We really need to look at the available water to supply to that development. And we have to hire our engineers to really look at that and work with DEP also, and possibly the city of Newburyport. You know, there's going to be water main extensions up there, sizes of main, that type of stuff for fire flow. But again, this would definitely have to go through an engineering firm that we would have to hire out to come up with the questions that we need answered.
Mike, how does the height of the highest point in this compare with the height of the our tank next to the Page School?
Next to the Page School doesn't even come into effect. If you can kind of understand, I know you want to keep this short, but we pump from the well field at down at Newburyport, and we pump into the pipe state tank next to the Page School. After that, there's a booster station that takes the water from there and pushes it up to Break Hill. And that Break Hill is much higher than that elevation of that development. But that's what the fire flows will tell you, and the hydraulic model will tell you, so that we're not making someone living up on Crane Neck on the top of the hill have less than 20 PSI coming up there. So that's what that model's for.
Okay. Thank you, Mike.
Excuse me,
Speak.
excuse me. Tell me if I don't want to, do I unmute myself or something?
We can hear you, Mike.
All right, I'll just shut up.
You have a mute button. You should have an icon there, Mike.
There you go.
So Archie, at this point, we've got a number of commission committee members. I know that Leah is, oh, there's Leah. I'm gonna let's hear from Leah. Now she's showing up. So Leah, I think you should be unmuted.
Yes, I am. I think I am.
Yep, we can hear you.
I can hear you.
Great.
So can you speak to what the planning department and the planning board will be looking at?
Sure thing. I'm Leah Zambernardi, the town planner. The planning board's role in all this is really advisory. And so at this state, where we're in this comment period to mass housing, I'll be reviewing the submission from a general planning perspective, such as some of those mass housing criteria Angus read earlier, like site appropriateness, character, housing need in town, but also some of the technical aspects. My intent, and I ran this by the planning board on Tuesday night, we had a meeting, is to draft a comment letter and submit it to the planning board for their review and edit. And they could possibly adopt it as their own or some kind of version of it. So the planning board has meetings on April 21st and May 5th, and they'll have time to discuss what their comments will be. And so they'll be in line to submit a comment letter to the town manager and board of selectmen mid-May, I gather.
So at this point, Archie, do you want me to start with names that I recognize, or or do I just go down the list in terms of opening it to comment? And I want to be clear, everybody on the call will be given an opportunity to speak. It's just a matter of what order.
Yeah, I can't see all that you can see, so I don't know how we're gonna pick. How can you recognize that someone wants to speak?
I can't, other than if they send me a chat. So what?
So everyone use the little balloon on the top right corner. You can give it to just say talk, and you will be called on. Will that work, Angus?
Well, I think I'm going to need to go down the list and say, and in some cases, like, I can see Brad Bashir's name and I can see other people's name as having signed
God,
up for the meeting.
Angus, John God just put up a chat, say, as a chair of the Open Space Committee, he'd like to say a couple of things.
Okay, yeah, John. John, you
You hear me?
Yep, we got you.
Our role would be largely, or would be advisory, just like the planning boards. Obviously, we'd like to work out, if this project proceeds, we would like to work out a trail and passive recreation plan on the open space part of it, which I guess, according to the Newburyport News today, was 66% of the 73 acres. Something like 15 acres of that is wetlands. And we've taken no official position. We are going to discuss this at our meeting next Wednesday night. But those are the things we're really concerned with. Again, we have no real review authority, but we think this project is very big. It's obviously very large and would have a huge impact on the neighborhood. But speaking for open space, we'd like to see as much of that as possible. That's it from me.
Thank you, John.
So let's see. Let's go. I'll go to Wendy Reed. Wendy, I'm going to unmute you. Just a second. Okay, Wendy, you should be all set.
Yeah, I don't really have anything additional to add other than what Bert and Leah and John have mentioned. All three of those boards that I'm involved with will be reviewing this in regularly scheduled meetings. Thank you.
This is probably a good opportunity to remind people that you can subscribe on the town website to receive posted agendas for such as Planning Board, Open Space Committee, obviously Board of Selectmen and others. So I would definitely encourage people to do that. Obviously, if Planning Board or anyone else is going to be discussing this project, that will be an agended item. So that's going to be your best opportunity to, make sure you're aware of when this will be discussed. And of course, by all means, contact my office or any of the staff in town office, and we'll, make sure you get the information you need.
I'd also like to, we've already received several very, very good written comments that makes compiling things easier, and it gives us all food for thought. So emails or snail mail comments sent to the town manager, we've already gotten several, and all of these are good, and we want to encourage that.
All right, we've got Donald. I'm trying to unmute you, Donald Doak or Doak. There you go.
Yeah, I'm unmuted. Thank you all very much. Really appreciate the gathering here. I had sent all my things into Angus, a number of questions into Angus, just following that kind of a protocol. But I think many probably saw the comments that were in the West Newbury News today about the scope and scale and the fit of this development into a very, very small portion, less than 1% of the town, to increase the town population by some 10% within a 1% total space of the town, and how those 600 plus cars that are spec'd in the plan would affect a number of things that you all will be looking at over the next several weeks. So I think that's, for us to hear from you all is going to be very important to see how our town officials and our committees are weighing in on this. We have had, as you all know, we do have a coalition, the West Newbury Neighborhood Coalition, and a number of those people have dug into the application, have found a lot of discrepancies in the application. So without going into that and just having 1 minute, those have been submitted. I know Angus has those, and we're expectant and hopeful that we can get answers for those fairly quickly. So really appreciate recognizing me, Angus, and look forward to continuing this conversation.
And I think Archie may already have said this, but we will be setting up an FAQ, frequently asked questions, on the town website. We have, as Archie said, we have received a lot of comments already, and we know more are coming our way. So especially in light of these constraints with the remote meetings or virtual meetings, I think it's going to be really good for us to get the questions and responses onto the town website.
Angus, may I just ask, you did a very nice job reviewing the process where we are now. The initial application for mass housing, we get the now until the 14th of June. And then there's the process where it comes back for committees to review and do a number of potential engineering studies and such. What is that second time frame? This one is normally 30 days. It's been extended out to 75. Can you give us a better understanding of what the next stage is?
That's a great question. Obviously, whether and when an application is filed locally, we don't know. Obviously, it wouldn't be before Mass Housing issues its letter, which I would expect would be at least a few weeks, possibly a month after that mid-June date that they receive comments. So I would think the earliest that would be filed would be July. And once it's filed, the Board of Appeals has 180 days to issue a decision. So that means we've got to be very organized right out of the gate, because that 180 days will pass quickly.
Very much appreciate the information. Very important. Thank you.
Sure. Okay. Kathy Fieri, I'm trying to unmute you. And I know this is going to be tedious for people, but we're going to need to go through one at a time, unmuting people just because of the technology.
I did send in my list of comments and questions, and I have two additional ones, which I will probably send in an email. One is concerning the stormwater runoff that I know everybody here remembers when the Mother's Day flood affected all the neighbors downstream. And I'm concerned particularly because they are building very next to where that Mother's Day flood originated, which is the wetlands and the beaver pond between me and Ed's property. I'm also, I mean, as I said, I'm just concerned about what's going to happen to my property with all the building on that hillside that's to the east of me. It's a steep hill. Water is just going to come down it. It's going to affect the water table. I have a barn, I have a garden, and I'm just concerned about all of that. I also am concerned about access to, and I didn't put this on there, to the right-of-way for National Grid. There is at this moment no access shown for the right-of-way, and I know that National Grid needs to get in there regularly, routinely for maintenance, and they also have a big construction project coming up because they're coming here and telling me about it. So those are two additional concerns from the comments I have already made. So thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you. All right. We got a chat from Gary Costa. So Gary, I'm trying to unmute you as we speak.
Hi, Gary Costa. I just unmuted myself.
Okay.
Other than the impact of our sort of suburban rural feeling, traffic on River Road, it's not very heavy right now, but it's a very narrow road. A lot of people use it for recreation. And I'm concerned that the traffic on Coffin Street, River Road, Rocks Village to 495 is going to be much greater. And especially with people going to and from work. How does the town, what can the town do to help mitigate that?
I think it's premature at this point to answer the question, other than to say that obviously traffic is going to be very much, central to the town's review. So that's going to be both, police and public works primarily. And, we would certainly anticipate if it gets to the ZBA stage that there would be a third-party engineering traffic study.
So one follow-up on that. What can the town apply any restrictions as a result of all these reviews, or is it the application gets submitted and we're done with it? We have traffic.
There's the town could certainly impose conditions, but there are constraints on that. So there's a lot of nuance to that question. So maybe we
Okay,
can in more detail at a future meeting. Dennis Lucy, I don't know if you're there just to listen in as a member of the Board of Appeals, but I did unmute you, so I don't know if you have any comments or if you're just listening.
Yes, this is Dennis here as part of the Board of Appeals group. Listening at this point and look forward to learning more.
Thanks. Okay. All right, and Judy Gregg, also a member of the Board of Appeals. Trying to unmute you, Judy.
How's that? Angus, thank you. Yes, I am a member of the zoning board of appeals. The committee has not formally met yet to discuss the issues at hand, either in person or virtually. However, we have received the Chapter 40B handbook from Mass Housing to review the specifications, in addition to finding the project specs on the town's website. Of course, we understand that once Mass Housing gives its preliminary approval, that a more complete and formal submission will be made by the developer. And at that point, the zoning board of appeals will become very active. I might also add, this is probably unfair, Patrick Higgins, who's one of our committee members, I believe is on this call, and Patrick is generally more informed than most of us. So forgive me, Patrick, if I put you on the spot, but if you have something more to add, that would be wonderful.
Judy, I'm sorry, what name was that?
Patrick Higgins, Patrick Higgins, if it is him.
Archie, could you make that up?
Didn't get it, no.
Angus, I can tell you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, it's Patrick Higgins.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Okay. Yep. I'm going in alphabetical, and there's a lot of callers, so it's. But yeah, you, Patrick, you're unmuted.
Hi, everybody. I'm just here collecting information. There's no formal process or review yet until there's a formal application to the ZBA. So until that point in time, it's just a learning process, I think, for us, and we'll review everything as it comes into us. Thank you.
Good. Great.
Angus, would you like to talk about that Mass Housing allows us to, gives us money to hire a consultant at that point? You want to just mention that? Yeah.
Yeah, I'll mention that, and then I also see Sam, who might be Sam Jocelyn, our building inspector, so I'll unmute him next. But yes, if the Mass Housing does issue a project eligibility letter, it would make the town eligible for a $15,000 technical assistance grant. And we did correspond with Mass Housing, and it's all but certain that we would get that. That would not be in lieu of third-party peer reviews of engineering or stormwater or water, that kind of thing. That would basically be to ensure that the Board of Appeals has the technical assistance they need to run the hearing, consider the application, manage the process, prepare, a draft decision, that kind of thing. So the consultant would be selected off a pre-approved list that Mass Housing puts out. So that's something that would give us some additional resource than we have right now. So, Sam, is that Sam Jocelyn or a different Sam? So I unmuted Sam, but Sam, you're, I think, muted on your end. Okay. All right, I'm going to call on Kate Day next, who is a local resident I know to be a town planner as well. So, Kate, are you there? Kate, I think you might be muted on your end. Hello? Okay. Scott Kelly. Scott Kelly.
Or Kelly Scott.
Kelly Scott, sorry.
That's fine. I appreciate all of the information that you guys put forward. I am trying to very much have faith in the town managers and planning boards and such. I'm a direct abutter. I've lived here since I was 11, and I can tell you with firsthand knowledge that the wetlands that are delineated on the plans are not correct. So my question is, how should I go about documenting that, and who do I tell and when?
So that's the jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission, and the process that application of notice of resource area delineation is presently before the Concom. They have not opened a hearing on that, and when they do schedule a hearing, you would receive notice as a direct abutter. There's no harm in sending comments to the conservation agent before that process formally begins, but that is a formal review process and public hearing, and I know that the commission also undertakes site walks and does an on-the-ground review of the wetlands and resource area delineation. Jim Sparolakis.
Yes, hello, everybody. I'm a member of the Finance Committee, and I certainly cannot speak for the Finance Committee. I'm also the newest member of the Finance Committee, but obviously this development is of significant scale. And so as far as I'm concerned, what impact will this scale of development have on our town finances? For example, tax revenue versus services provided, even if that's only a projection. So I could see us having an advisory role to the town relative to that. So I'll leave it at that for now. Angus, thank you. Oh, did you hear what I just had to say, Angus?
Yeah, we did. We did hear you, Jim. Thank you. Timothy Cullen, I'm trying to unmute you. Timothy Cullen, I think you might be muted on your end. Paul Botto, I tried to unmute you. I think you might be muted on your ends.
Hello. Thank you, Angus.
Who's that?
This is Paul Botto.
Great.
I'm here to observe. I am an abutter on Cortland Lane, and I've been in contact with Don and the group of neighbors. Kind of trying to assess this development and how it's going to impact us. So no particular comments right now. I think Don's doing a great job of helping us kind of lead this thing, and just wanted to say thank you to everybody for all the information.
Brian Ott. Brian Ott, you are unmuted.
Yeah, this is Brian. Yeah, I'm just an interested citizen. I'm a neighbor of John Dodge's, and I'm just very concerned about the community in general and all the things you guys are talking about, impact on, for me personally, housing value, traffic, impact financially on the town. So seems like a rather large project. I was shocked to hear the 10% increase in population for a 1% part of the land. That's pretty concerning from my perspective, but I'm just mostly listening and trying to get involved and see what I can do to learn more about this project and see if it's appropriate or not. Thanks for all you guys are doing.
Thanks.
I would ask again, anybody that would like to speak, hit the little balloon on the top right to chat, and Angus will recognize you with that too.
Okay, Casey, I have, you're up.
I'm sorry, I didn't really mean to unmute, but I know that most of the people that are on this chat are probably very familiar with this whole process, but I don't think that everybody in town is necessarily familiar with the whole process. And the question that I was asked was, well, if the Zoning Board of Appeals says, no, we don't want this project, what happens then? And that's the part of it that I think is a little bit confusing, that, you know, because it's a 40B project, we can't just say no. So I wonder if you could just sort of give a brief overview of how the thing plays out.
That's a really good context, Casey, that we kind of skipped over. So thank you for pointing that out. So basically, the reason that a developer can apply for a 40B comprehensive permit is the town has less than 10% of the housing units are deed restricted affordable housing. And so by state law that was approved in 1969, that allows basically a developer override. And as long as the proposed development meets the affordability criteria, which is 25% of ownership units or 20% of rental units. In this case, the proposal is for ownership units. So as long as 25% of those units are subsidized housing under the state's definitions, they're able to apply for a local comprehensive permit.
Subsidized housing, Angus, affordable.
Yes, there is a subsidy to it, but yes. So affordable housing. So that the developer is able to apply for a waiver of local regulations to the extent those local regulations would make the project uneconomic. If that goes to the Board of Appeals, the board would hold a hearing and they could either approve the project with conditions, or deny the project. If the project was denied, there's a high probability that denial would be appealed. And under the state legislation, they've set up a separate appeals process. So it's, you know, a developer appeal of a denial would not go to the Superior Court or the Land Court. It would go to the Housing Appeals Committee, which over many decades has typically would overturn a denial. So in 98% of the cases, the Housing Appeals Committee is going to side with the developer. So it's not like any other local project. It's not like a subdivision. It's not like a special permit. It really is a very different process. The reason it's called a comprehensive permit is because the Board of Appeals is acting in place of what other local reviews would normally take place, primarily the planning board. So as Leah, our town planner, said, the planning board in this case is strictly has an advisory role. They would offer comments, but they do not take a vote. They do not have jurisdiction over a 40B project.
Angus, if the ZBA, the Zoning Board of Appeals, approves it with conditions, what can spill out of that?
So it would be important when the ZBA is considering conditions that it look at conditions that would not make the project uneconomic. Because if the conditions they put on it make it uneconomic, the developer could appeal those conditions to the Housing Appeals Committee. So yes, conditions can be imposed, and they almost certainly would be. I mean, in every case, they're always imposed conditions, but there's a balancing act that has to take place so that the conditions don't effectively amount to a denial. With that said, I did refer to the developer appeals going to the Housing Appeals Committee. There's nothing that precludes, you know, an abutter appeal to, you know, to a different court of jurisdiction. So I don't know, Mike McCarron, if you're on, it might be, you know, you might be able to describe this better than I have done.
Can you hear me, Angus?
Yep.
All right. The question of conditions is that you can't make the project uneconomic, but the conditions also have to be consistent with local needs. And that's a term that's basically in their regulations, and the cases have kind of filled that out to mean that there has to be a substantial nexus between what you're requiring as a condition and you know, and fitting in with the development itself. And so you're not supposed to go beyond things that are, you know, not what we would consider usual planning type aspects. I don't know if that helps you there, but when you have conditions, they just have to be consistent with local needs. And if they are, then they will be upheld by the Housing Appeals Committee. It's a different standard that the Housing Appeals Committee uses when reviewing conditions versus a denial, because a denial basically almost sends it right to the Housing Appeals Committee for almost like a trial, where the developer will present his reasons for doing it, you know, for his plan, and the town gets to rebut that. For abutters, they have a different method. They don't appeal to the Housing Appeals Committee. If they are upset with or they wish to challenge either an approval or an approval with conditions, then they must appeal to Land Court or Superior Court. That's, I don't know if you want me to add anything more than that.
All right, Brad Bashore, I've just tried to unmute you. Brad, are you there? Okay. We've got someone named Carney. Carney, are you there?
Angus, Rose Vitere has a question.
Okay. Rose's icon is showing up different than anybody else's icon on my screen. It's showing as a speaker with an X next to it. Rose, say something, see if we can hear you. We did get your chat, so if, I don't know if it's a question you can send me, but literally the icon is different for that caller than for anybody else on the call, and I don't know why.
Rose, do you know that if your microphone is working?
Okay, we have a.
Angus, you can also try, Chief Durand is here now.
Okay, he is, but do we know I think he might be one of the named callers, which I am going to start going down the list of named caller, or just numbered callers, I should say. So I'll just do those in order. So caller 100, I don't know if you know who you are, but caller 100 is unmuted. Caller 67 is unmuted. And I'm gonna unmute a couple of people at a time, and so I see we've got Paul Savigny on the line as well, but I don't see him as a named caller. He's got a number. So Archie, I'm just starting to unmute some of the numbered callers. So if people say something, and we'll hear you, and then you can talk.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear someone, yes.
This is Mike Ritchie, 28 Coffin Street.
Oh, hi, Mike.
The house, not the land in question, obviously. My concerns have been pretty much brought up by everybody, but it's just the crazy scale of this thing. And the fact that we're going to have 14 units as our fence. He's got 50% of my property and all the other abutters. It's all favored towards the properties that have already currently been established. It puts all the houses closer together than anything in the neighborhood. And the current design of the road, if you were heading to 95 from anywhere in this development except for the front little portion, you're going to come out onto Coffin Street and go up that way. And it turns Coffin Street, a side street, into a main intersection in front of a bunch of people's houses that have children that bought houses on a side street that's no longer a side street, is my main concerns, and pretty much all the ones that have been brought up so far today.
So Kelly Scott asked that John Dodge be recognized again. I don't see John asking that, but
Okay, we do have, I see Fred Chania. I know he's a member of our local tree committee and submitted comments, and also a project of butter. So Fred, I've just tried to unmute you. You should be all set.
Okay, thanks, Angus. Yeah, I am unmuted. You did get my comments. Thank you very much. And you did answer one of my questions about the technical advisor. It's unclear to me whether or not that 10% limit or the 6% limit that was a later addition to the original legislation applies, because I believe that the number of households or dwellings or whatever the measure is in town would qualify us to have a 6% requirement for the affordable housing and not the 10%. I don't know what the answer is. I just am raising the issue because a question was raised in my mind about that. And you did get my written comments, and the tree committee will be looking at erosion and tree cover and tree replacement and all sorts of things like that, including the impacts on the downstream wetlands.
Fred, what's this 6%? Where are you getting that?
You mentioned at the beginning that the town has a requirement to have 10% of its.
Yep. I know about the 10%. Go.
Yeah, and I thought that there's something for smaller towns that lowers that requirement to 6%.
I don't believe so.
There is not.
Okay, all right. Well, then I misread whatever I was looking at. So,
Yeah.
all right.
You know, send it our way. Whatever you see, by all means, send it our way.
All right.
Okay. All right. So we've still got a couple of numbered callers unmuted, and I'm going to unmute a couple more.
Angus, you got me. This is Paul.
Yeah, we got you, Paul. Great. You're number 74, I think. So that's Paul.
So for the listeners, this is Paul Savigny, a health agent for the town. With a project of this size being over 10,000 gallons per day for the wastewater, the Title V does not apply. So there's really not much involvement with the Board of Health regards to the septic system on this project.
So the septic system will be reviewed and inspected by the state DEP staff members.
Paul, how would a large system like that, putting a lot of new water into after it comes out of the septic system, would that be such an amount of water that it might actually be affecting the water table? I don't know. I'm just throwing that out.
Yes, and part of their criteria is anything designed over 2,000 gallons per day, you got to do groundwater mounting study for that particular reason. So when you do have a rectangular box that you're dumping effluent in or clean water, you will be raising the water table in that area. So in order to provide the proper separation to the groundwater, you have to conduct a groundwater mounting study, so typically on a regular system, you need 4 feet above water table, and then the groundwater mounting would be added to that. So they maybe need to be 6 feet above the water table or 5 feet, depending on what the groundwater mounting calculations show. And it's all based on the flow, the soil, geology of the soil, as well as the physical shape of the disposal area. Again, that will be, that it is covered for any system over 2,000 gallons per day, but any system over 10,000 gallons per day is basically Title V does not apply.
So Paul, what's the number generally assumed per bedroom?
It's 110 gallons per bedroom. So this system is probably going to be around 43,000 gallons per day from what I've seen on the application.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I am now seeing Rose Vatier is now visible. And so Rose, I'm trying to unmute you. So Rose, I think you might be muted on your ends, but you're unmuted on my ends.
I'm unmuted now. Thank you for taking my call. Rose Vatieri, 54 Coffin Street. I'm a direct abutter to this planned project. And I noticed that in the application, the applicants referenced the West Newbury Housing Production Plan. And my question is, has the housing plan been the Department of Housing and Community Development approved and certified?
So the plan itself was approved in June of 2018 and sent to the state, but the town is not certified as being in compliance with the plan. It's a so-called planned production plan or housing production plan. It used to be called planned production. So the town have to have produced, I think it's 0.5% of our total year-round housing units we would have to produce in affordable housing in order to achieve a so-called safe harbor. And then you have to do that each year in order to keep that safe harbor moving forward. And the town has not produced enough affordable units to meet that standard.
So does that mean that the plan is void at this point because years have passed when we haven't met our housing number?
No, the plan is still in effect. It just doesn't get us any protection unless the production follows in accordance with the plan. So that means if this project went forward in some fashion, the units would count toward the town's inventory and would create some safe harbor for some period of time.
You can catch up, basically.
Excuse me?
You can catch up, but
okay.
You can add more to catch up from a previous year.
Well, my question is based on the fact that the zoning board's decision is impacted by whether or not the DHCD has approved and certified our local housing plan. And so if we haven't fulfilled the expectations of it yet, would that make it ineligible to be used by the zoning board in responding to this project application?
I think what you mean is because we're not really in compliance with it, that means that it doesn't
It has no weight.
it can't be used to prevent a 40B plan. That's
All right.
that's
That answers my question. Thank you.
okay.
Okay, I've just unmuted caller 98. And we've still got some other numbered callers unmuted. So if you're interested in speaking, caller 101.
Hey, Angus, Chief Durand.
Oh, hey, Chief.
How are you?
Good. We got to get you set up with a named account so I can identify you next time. But
Okay, great.
thanks.
No, just briefly, if and when the project is moving forward, we work with a developer in Mass Highway for a traffic study. Make sure proper signage is up, parking plans on site, etc. I know there's a big concern with Coffin Street, River Street traffic, so that would obviously be looked into, as well as any new Main Street entrance into the property.
Who would, because 113 is a state highway, who has jurisdiction on that intersection?
That would be with Mass Highway, the same as over at the Legion there. They came out, helped out with a study there, so they would be contacted, and I would work with them. Hello?
Yes.
Yep. Okay, caller 78 or 81.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay.
89. Okay, someone's got their TV on. Okay, let's see. John Dodge, I think you wanted to speak again.
Angus, can you mute caller 91 again? I think they're coming.
I just did. I
Okay.
just did. Yeah.
Thanks. Thank you.
John, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Go ahead.
I didn't know, I don't have anything to say. I didn't.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
We do have the developer Chip Hall on, so I'm going to unmute Chip and Chip, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, did you want to offer comment?
Just wanted to take in the public input, that's all.
Okay.
Just taking copious notes.
Great.
Excuse me, Angus. Angus. John again. May I just kind of address that? I appreciate that Mr. Hall is here on the call. We've got other developers who have looked at this opportunity, this project back here, and they have done at least a very stand-up job of addressing the butters and coming and speaking to them prior to any filings of anything. And, unfortunately, we didn't get that courtesy from Mr. Hall. So it's very, very disappointing, I think, for many people. And I just want to go on record as saying that. Thank you.
Angus, do you think there's anyone else that out there that?
Well, so unfortunately, I think I'm going to take a risk here and say unmute all. And that way, if there's anybody on the call who I haven't gotten to yet, because I can't keep track with all the numbers. So I'm just going to unmute all. And so if you're someone who wants to speak up, but understand you might not be the only one. So let's try not to talk over each other.
It's Steve Swallow Angus.
Okay, yep, you are unmuted. You have the floor, Steve.
Thank you. Section of the, I'm going to call it the feasibility study, the study that we have 75 days to do. But what is the proper name, please, Angus?
It's the project eligibility and site approval process with Mass Housing.
What I'm understanding is this is the most important part of what West Newbury needs to engage in, because if that is approved, then we have very little recourse, including the Zoning Board of Appeals. Is that correct?
I would not want to generalize other than to say that certainly with a comprehensive permit, the town has substantially less authority than it does under any other local permit.
So they're looking for a comprehensive.
This is Jean Lambert. Am I being heard?
Yes. We hear you, Jean.
Okay, great. Thank you. I would like to just say a few things briefly, if it's appropriate at this point. May I go ahead?
Yes.
Yep. Okay, great. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
I've been a resident of this town for a long time. I served on the last, what was it, the major plan, I can't remember the exact title of it, but our great big forward-thinking plan years ago, and water was the gating issue then, and I know it's still an issue. I'm very concerned about the water, not only the runoff that people have mentioned, but those of us in well water. I'm not that near the project, but I am on a well, and the whole water table information that's been shared tonight has been very problematic for me. And secondly, of 3 points, the traffic. I've traveled Coffin Street for 35 years. People drive in the middle of the road. The road is narrow. It's going to be a nightmare. And if any part of this project goes forward, I would request that no points of egress be on Coffin Street, either through Cortland Lane or from the site itself. Have it all go through Maine, or you're going to kill us all here in the neighborhood. And I'm not saying that to be dramatic. It's a very difficult road, narrowness, as I said, hills where you have no visibility, even under the best of conditions, and with several dangerous curves, one of them being Coffin onto River Road. Finally, the information that some people share, the statistics that this basically puts an increase, 11% increase in population on 1% of our land. That is extraordinary. These 40B developments, and I'm not against affordable housing, but these developments, the whole premise was for urban areas near transportation and also dense suburban areas. Never, ever would they plan for something like this, and people will have to introduce that traffic density because there's no public transportation. Anyway, I appreciate you listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you.
They not address these questions.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear someone, yes. If you say your name.
Hi. Hi, this is Melissa D'Amato. I live on Cortland Lane. I bought the property that's being proposed. Just wanted to reiterate what everybody else has said. Very concerned about this. The fact that this is such a large development in such a small part of our land in West Newbury is very concerning. Has anybody talked about, I haven't heard anybody mention anything about the sidewalks. Like, how would these people get to town? How would they get to some of these, the transportation, the bus station, if there's no sidewalks? As we all know, the students can't walk from our town, our street to the Page School as it is now. There's no sidewalks for them to walk there. So what is the plan for sidewalks?
There is no plan.
Is that a concern? It's a concern to me. Are you concerned about that?
It is a concern. I think people are, where we've got everyone unmuted, I think people are trying to be sensitive and not everyone speak up at once. But the site eligibility process is precisely for the purpose of identifying those types of concerns. And then if site eligibility letter is granted, Mass Housing could issue conditions on that. And then within the comprehensive permit process, that's really when you get into the detail with the detailed engineering plans and the peer reviews and looking at pedestrian safety, among other things. So the lack of a response does not indicate that it's not of concern. That's for sure.
Thank you.
You think we're good?
Is there anybody else?
Hey, Angus.
Yep.
Scott Blazinski. I'm probably the newest resident on Cortland Lane. I am going to echo what Don said about Chip's approach, not proactively communicating to the abutters. And I'm curious if he has any response, seeing that he's joined the call here. Give him an opportunity to explain why he didn't proactively communicate to the abutters in the form and fashion that Don mentioned.
Chip, are you, did you hear that? Are you?
Angus, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear someone.
Okay, this is Melissa Robbins. I'm counsel for the
Oh,
developer.
hi, Melissa. Yeah.
Hey, Angus, how you doing? Hey, I just want to make sure that people understand the little bit about the back process here is that we did reach out to the municipality early when we were about to apply, but that does not mean reach out to the abutters. This actually would be the time that we would hold an abutters meeting right now, but we cannot do that, obviously. Once we run into a new situation where we can hold an abutters meeting, it would be our intent to do so.
Why would you not talk to the abutters before the plans were developed?
Right now, the plans are conceptual, and I think that Angus has run through the procedure pretty well. So until we apply with Mass Housing, we don't even have a conceptual plan. So generally what happens, because we have such a long amount of time with Mass Housing, is we apply to Mass Housing, and then we will go before the Board of Selectmen generally to give a presentation, and then we will also have an abutters meeting. And that would be something we would like to do in the future.
So is it the
You know,
developer's
to walk the
intention to
land with
work
me
with the
so I can
town?
Show you more accurately for your maps, the wetlands and the ecological impacts.
Obviously, I don't want to get to specifics this evening, but my intent would, yes, to be once we are able to do so, to have an abutters meeting so that we can give a full presentation on what's proposed before Mass Housing or what's proposed before we go to the Zoning Board of Appeals. We would like to have a meeting with the abutters. So once that's possible, that we will do that.
Well,
But the
but
meeting which is for you to propose.
when are we talking about that? I mean, it's probably not going to be possible to have an in-person meeting at least for a month. So a lot can happen in a month. So maybe you have to set something up remotely like this.
Yes, and so, Mr. Chair, my intention at this point is to at least wait until after May 5th to see what the governor's order is going to be regarding public hearings and social distancing. And then at that point, if we're getting to the end of the mass housing process or getting ready to go towards ZBA application, we would look to set up something remotely. Since we have an extended amount of time here, and as Angus had stated, that we have 45 additional days for mass housing until June for the town comment. We're going to hold off for a bit just to see if we can meet in person, because I think that it would be beneficial for everybody to meet and to go through all the plans and the elevations to see what we're proposing.
May I just interject one more request? This is Jean Lambert. I'm in the neighborhood, but not in a butter. Can those of us who are going to be affected by this project, but may not be abutters, also be invited to that meeting or another
Absolutely.
meeting?
Yeah, and Angus, if you'll allow me to respond, do you have any issue with me responding, or Mr. Chair, do you have any issue with me responding?
Go ahead, Melissa.
So once we actually schedule an abutters meeting, we would share that information with Angus, because he has been kind enough to set up that website for information so that anybody that wants to attend, even if you're not a 300-foot abutter, could attend that meeting.
Yeah, if there's anyone who wants to receive notice on this project, just send a note to my email or to the selectmen's email, and we've got a list of interested parties, so we can make sure that you get that notice.
Angus, this is Don. Can we please get Melissa's last name? I apologize. I can't.
Absolutely. I'm sorry. My name is Melissa. My last name is Robbins, Robbins. I'm from the law firm of Deshane and Farrell, and I represent the developer. I apologize. I should have said that up front.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Angus, for also allowing me to speak. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And I will say that the developer has offered, as Melissa just said, to appear before the Board of Selectmen to formally present the project. I discussed that with Archie, and that we didn't want to do that at this stage of the process, but I do expect that that will be on a future Selectmen agenda.
Angus, this is Casey.
Go ahead.
75 days is still not a lot of time, and there's a lot of concern from people on various different aspects of this proposal. So our response that we make in 75 days is rather important. And I'd like to point out that setting up one of these go-to-meeting calls or a Zoom call is not particularly difficult. And it would be possible for groups of people who have a similar concern to have a meeting just among themselves. It doesn't have to be an official meeting at all, just to discuss what kinds of concerns they would like to convey to you and the selectmen, so that you can have that input into your response to the town. And I think it would be important to not wait until May to get started with any of that. We need to have a really cogent response, well thought out, backed up by facts, so that it has bearing on this issue. We can't afford to just have people who have concerns that are random and sound like, well, we just don't want it. And I mean, probably we just don't want it, but that's not going to carry the day. We have to have a really good, solid response that delineates exactly what our concerns are and why they are valid. So I think it would be wise if people could get together remotely, just use Zoom or GoToMeeting, and just discuss what is a good, solid response to this proposal.
So this is Melissa D'Amato again. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
We can.
So I don't think this is a case of us just not wanting this development. I think, and maybe I'm just misunderstanding your intent of that comment, but we have been meeting, a number of us that abut this project, and we have, I think, legitimate concerns about the impact this will have on the wetlands, on the environment, on the traffic. I mean, you've heard all the different comments that we've been making today. So I just wanted to say, and maybe again, I'm sorry if I misunderstood your comment, but I was hearing it as if you're taking it that we just don't want this project, and that's really not the case. We understand that, you know, that this is a property that's for sale and there's potential that something's going to happen back there, but to have the scope of this project is so huge, it just doesn't make any sense to the majority of us on this call. So I just wanted to mention that.
Kathleen, I want to also remind a butter, and we would very much welcome, as you have probably read about, and we have not connected with you, but through the West Newbury Neighborhood Coalition, that's the concept and the forum of that. So I think we can get your email address. I can be reached through the West Newbury Facebook, West Newbury News site to send me a message. Would love to add you or whoever would like to that. And I agree with your concept of these 75 days, because right now to do a real proper title search on the 28 Coffin property, you can't get to the recorder's office. You can do things online, but our attorneys have advised a different way to do that in person in other ways. So I do agree that the timing, and I have that concept into Angus on my email questions, on the questions I submitted about extending this period. So Kathleen, thank you for bringing that up also. And thank you, Melissa.
Who was that speaking?
Say something to
I believe that was Donald Doak. Is that
That
right?
was Donald Doak, yeah.
I'd just like to respond to Melissa briefly. Melissa, I did not mean to suggest that you just didn't want the project. In fact, it was the opposite that I was trying to say, that we don't want it to sound like that. And if the comments aren't incisive and really to the point and really demonstrate that we understand both sides of this issue, it is going to sound like we just don't want it. And we can't do that. We have to be really, really clear about the actual problems that we see with this project.
Yeah, no, I understand. Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that. But we've had some meetings, and there's been several people that are on this call now that have, in my opinion, put together a very intelligent, comprehensive study or, you know, analysis of what we think are the problems with this. So I think that I just wanted to mention that this isn't something that we've just randomly joined this call. Like, we've had some meetings within the neighborhood here already. So thank you, but thanks for clarifying that. I appreciate it.
All right, at this point, I'm gonna mute.
Do we have anybody else that wants to comment, or? Why don't we discuss what our next forum will be and what will happen?
Okay. So at the upcoming regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Selectmen on Monday night, this item is listed as an agenda item, just to provide an update more broadly, specifically on this meeting that's taking place tonight. So this will just be a synopsis of this discussion, and we'll set out the process people can expect. One of the next steps is going to be for the Board of Selectmen to schedule a site visit to walk the site. We have had initial contact with the developer, and so we'll schedule a time for that. Under the open meeting law, that is not a formal public meeting per se, but I'm quite sure that we would make it known, you know, ahead of time when that's going to take place. But we have to be cautious, obviously, with the social distancing. We don't want to implicitly invite people, because we've got to all keep our distance. So, but the board will be walking the site. There will be a separate site walk scheduled with department heads, including the town planner, the building inspector, conservation agent, and so forth. Just so at a staff level, we're all familiar with the lay of the lands. Mass Housing, part of their process is to hold a conference call with the municipality early in the review. just to identify at a high level any initial concerns the town may have. So we're in the process of scheduling that call with Mass Housing. That's likely to take place in the next 2 weeks. We've been corresponding with the zoning board through its chairman, and they're working with the support of the building inspector to set up training for the Board of Appeals to make sure that if this does end up getting filed with them, that they're current on 40B and case law and so forth. And we're also taking a close look at the regulation, the local rules and regs for 40B to see whether those might benefit from being updated. In terms of the Board of Selectmen has said that there will be at least one more dedicated meeting in addition to this topic appearing on its regularly scheduled meetings. Archie, I don't know if coming out of tonight, if you want to sketch out what you envision for the board's role, but I do want to reiterate before you do that, that we will be setting up an FAQ on the town website over the course of the next week. And our goal would be to continue to keep that current. So as questions come in, we would, as soon as we have answers, we would post the questions and our responses to the town website. That's really in an effort to supplement these types of meetings, recognizing that these remote meetings are challenging and don't really allow for the full public participation that we all would like to have. So the website's going to be an important resource to stay current with what's going on.
I'd like to say that the concise written comments are really good. We can create a folder, and as Angus said, to have a master one sort of, again, concise letter with our major concerns about the project to be culled from all the individual ones, put that together while maintaining the while also including the ones from individual residents or groups of residents. So I'd like to so written comments are great because it makes it easier for us to collate them in a sense. So that would be our final step. Again, after I would say meeting at least, at least once more. We've been lucky in this sense. We've actually been lucky because this comment period is only 30 days, and so if one thing out of this coronavirus situation, we actually get a little bit more time to get our ducks in the row.
So we have, put out a call for public comments, and we've asked people to provide any comments by June 1st. As Archie said, we've already received some very thoughtful, very well constructed comments from a number of different residents and others. And so, keep those coming. Obviously, June 1st is kind of the outside of the timeline. Earlier is better. It gives us more time to really consider those comments and questions. We've put out more of an informal, not a hard deadline, but I've asked the department heads and through them their boards and commissions that they support provide comments no later than mid-May. I think in reality, we'll probably get some of those comments sooner, but we want to make sure people have the time to really look at this in a thoughtful way. So as we go forward, or as the board goes forward in preparing its comments, I think it's fair to say there will be updates, if not on every single Board of Selectmen agenda, probably just about every Selectmen agenda, if not every agenda for the next 6 or 8 weeks. There will be status updates on where we are with this process.
That's good. I'd like to thank everyone for participating. This is, I think it worked out a little better than we planned. It's hard to, I hope everyone was able to get through. I'd like to thank Angus for organizing this. This isn't easy to get it working, and hopefully at some point we'll get away from these kind of meetings, but please stay in contact with us.
I do want to just see if Mike McCarron, our town council, a lot's been said. I don't know, Mike, if you have any closing comments.
No, Angus, you can hear me, right?
Yes.
Yep.
I'm impressed with everyone on getting those comments in. I've read a number of the ones that have been sent, and they are exactly what Casey was alluding to, is very specific and very related to the actual property and some of the concerns that are there. And so, as you think of them, certainly, if you have some idea or if you have some information, that's going to be good. But if you have questions that you want us to look at, please feel free to get those into Angus so that, you may think of something that could be of real concern that, would aid us in getting a complete picture of the development. That's it.
Okay, thanks, Mike.
Yeah,
You good, Rick?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you all. Have a good evening. Everyone stay safe. Good night. Thank you.
Safe and healthy.